Good morning. Good morning. I am Jen Raffensperger, the minister of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York, and as we prepare to begin worship, I invite you to center yourself as you hear the sound of our bell.
It is our practice to light a chalice at the start of each gathering. The flaming chalice is the symbol of the living tradition of Unitarian Universalism. We also invite everyone at home to light a candle as we share our chalice lighting words. Our chalice lighting words today are from the Reverend Sharon Wiley. It's entitled, "The Balance We Seek." The hours of the day and night are in balance. In honor of earth-centered traditions that celebrate this time of year, we observe that the flaming chalice holds the elements of the four directions: earth, air, fire, water. The lamp oil for earth, the air that feeds the flame, the fire we light, and the chalice itself, the cup, the symbol of water. We light our chalice and reflect on the balance we seek in our lives, the balance we seek in our hearts, the balance we seek in our world. Now, we invite those of you at home to join in singing, while still muted, our hymn, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple," number 16 in your grave.
'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in a place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right. 'Tis a gift gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right.
Thank you, Katrina and Lisa and Gretchen. That was really beautiful. So, 2 cameras. When I was a kid, one of my very favorite books that I checked out of the school library over and over again and read so many times was a book called My Side of the Mountain by Jean Craighead George. It's a book about a boy named Sam who lives in a crowded apartment in New York City with his large family. His father has often told him tales of his great-grandfather's old farm in the Catskill Mountains. And so one May, Sam fills his backpack and takes a train north to try to find the land and live there. Sam spends the summer learning how to hunt and fish and making a home by hollowing out a tree. He makes friends with a weasel and a raccoon that both live near his tree. He gets a book from the library on falcon training and takes a baby falcon from a nest to raise. This book is not based on a true story. It is a daydream of a world where a young person can truly live on the land. Originally published in 1959, it still resonates with me today anytime I hear of anyone trying to live off the grid. And I'm going to share a little part of that book with you today, in which the autumn provides food and loneliness. September blazed a trail into the mountains. First, she burned the grasses seeded and were harvested by the mice and the winds. Then she sent the squirrels and chipmunks running boldly through the forest, collecting and hiding nuts. Then she frosted the aspen leaves and left them sunshine yellow. Then she gathered the birds together in flocks, and the mountaintop was full of songs and twitterings and flashing wings. The birds were ready to move to the south. And I, Sam Gribley, felt just wonderful, just wonderful. I pushed the raft down the stream and gathered arrowleaf bulbs, cattail tubers, bulrush roots, and the nut-like tubers of the sedges. And then the crop of crickets appeared, and Frightful hopped all over the meadow, snagging them in her great talons and eating them. I tried them because I had heard they are good. I think it was another species of cricket that was meant. I think the field cricket would taste excellent if you were starving. I was not starving, so I preferred to listen to them. I abandoned the crickets and went back to the goodness of the earth. I smoked fish and rabbit, dug wild onions by the pouchful, and raced September for her crop. Later, seeing the weasel changing his mantle for winter awoke the first fears in me. The snow and the cold and the long, lifeless months are ahead, I thought. The wind was blowing hard and cool across the mountain. And I must say here that I was beginning to wonder if I should not go home for the winter and come back again in the spring. Everything in the forest was getting prepared for the harsh months. Not to spoil anything for you, the book has honestly aged rather well, and I encourage you to check it out for yourself, but Sam does make it through the winter. And he spends a lot of time dwelling on the loneliness that fall brings, as well as on the food. And today we're talking about the autumnal equinox, which happened earlier this week. The equinox is both a single moment and a season of change. Sam watched the changes come over the mountain where he lived in a very different way than the changes of autumn came when he lived in New York City. I'd love for you to think about what kind of changes you see happening in the world around you as the seasons shift. I'd also love for you to think about how the change in seasons makes you feel. Do you love fall and the cooler weather? Do the shorter days make you sad? Are there favorite or comforting foods that you love to eat in the fall? Have you seen birds flying south for the winter yet? And if you'd like, feel free to share a few of your favorite signs of fall in the chat. And as we think about those birds soaring overhead in a V, flying to someplace warmer, I invite you to listen to special music presented for us today that is all about geese migrating.
Something told the wild geese it was time to go. Though the field lay golden, something whispered, snow. Leaves were green and glaring, berries last took lost, but beneath warm feathers, something cautioned frost. All the sagging orchards steamed with amber spice, but each wild breast stiffened at remembered eyes. Something told the wild geese it was time to fly. Summer sun was on their wings. Winter, winter, winter in their cry.
That was beautiful, thank you. It is the practice, of this congregation to share each week's offering with an organization serving our community that upholds our values. We use Share the Plate to honor our commitment to service to our local community through these generous donations to local partners. September's Share the Plate recipient is the Rainbow Rose Center. We will now see a short video.
I'm your friend. I'm your coworker. I'm your neighbor.
I am your family.
I am more likely to face social isolation.
I can be fired from my job because of who I am.
I can be evicted for who I love.
Thank you.
Today's reading is a poem by Rainer Maria Rilke titled Onto a Vast Plain. It has been translated into English by Joanna Macy and Anita Barrows. You are not surprised at the force of the storm. You have seen it growing. The trees flee. Their flight sets the boulevard streaming, and you know he whom they flee is the one you move toward. All your senses sing him as you stand at the window. The weeks stood still in summer. The tree's blood rose. Now you feel it wants to sink back into the source of everything. You thought you could trust that power when you plucked the fruit. Now it becomes a riddle again, and you again a stranger. Summer was like your house. You know where each thing stood. Now you must go out into your heart as onto a vast plain. Now the immense loneliness begins. The days go numb. The wind sucks the world from your senses like withered leaves. Through the empty branches, the sky remains. It is what you have. Be earth now and evensong. Be the ground lying under that sky. Be modest now, like a thing ripened until it is real, so that he who began it all can feel you when you reach toward him.
Thank you, Mary. Listening to the radio on my Wednesday morning commute up here to York this past week, I heard the DJ say with great enthusiasm, "Happy first day of fall." He went on to note, "The equinox occurs at 3:21 this afternoon." He then played the song "Meet Me on the Equinox" by the band Death Cab for Cutie, which was a nice touch. When I was a kid, I puzzled over the whole equinox thing. How was it a single moment? When I was a kid, there wasn't Wikipedia, but there is now, so I took some time to remind myself. An equinox is the instant in time when the plane of Earth's equator passes through the geometric center of the sun's disk. This occurs twice each year, around 20 March and 23 September. In other words, it is the moment at which the center of the visible sun is directly above the equator. That clears that up. This is the time when daylight and darkness are balanced. We have approximately equal amounts of both. We know the days are growing shorter as we move toward the winter solstice and the longest night of the year. We revel in the last warm and dusty days that feel like summer. Or perhaps we revel in the first brisk breezes that feel like fall. The turning of the wheel of the year and the change of seasons, for those who live in areas that experience them, bring about different emotions and ideas for everyone. Some of us feel overwhelming joy as the hottest days of the year slip into memory, as the chilly nights return, as the comforting darkness increases. Some of us are seasonally affected and know that it is time to get out the therapy lamps and prepare our personal rituals that allow us to keep our balance as the nighttime overtakes the day. Some of us manage to glory in the joy of fall in its own right, living in that moment, not dwelling on what has gone before or what is to come. In Unitarian Universalism, we name 6 sources that have shaped the living tradition of our faith as we know it today. One of these 6 sources is spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. The sacred circle of life never feels more illuminated than at these times of transition. Some days it's hard to remember that we are creatures of this physical world, a planet spinning swiftly through space. And some days it feels impossible to forget. What does it mean, though, to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature, Sometimes nature is strange and mercurial. And of course, we grow increasingly aware of the impact we have on nature by virtue of humanity's collective actions. In the pagan traditions of the Northern Hemisphere, the equinox of the past week marks the celebration of Mabon, a harvest festival. It is a time to consider the richness of that which was planted at the time of the vernal equinox in the spring, and all the bounty it has provided to us to move through the months of winter ahead. During the winter, the land must rest and restore itself for the next season of growth, and we are invited to do the same. Balance. Growth. Work and rest, day and night, warm and cold, the world needs them all. We need them all. And at this turning point of the year, we seek the balance that will enable our growth. What we have, who we are, who we may yet become, all perched here at the turning of the year. If the equinox lasts only a moment, how do we keep that balance? If balance is stillness, is balance stillness? How do we prepare for the movement that growth requires? Y'all, balance is hard work, and growth can hurt. If the moment of the equinox is the fulcrum of the lever of the year, that means we tip over the next moment, right? Once we place a little tiny bit more on one side of that tipping point than is on the other side, then that side becomes the weighted one. That half of the seesaw is the part that tips down. The energy it takes to keep that lever poised. Balance is work. If you've ever stood up on a bus or a train hanging onto that strap for dear life, you know balance is work. If you've ever tried to learn to skateboard or to juggle or to keep books balanced on your head, you know balance will use muscles you didn't even know you had. So when we imagine a single moment where the world hangs in balance, what muscles must we flex to consider that moment fully? Right now, today, that single moment has passed. In our position on the planet, we are in the time of cooler air and longer nights. The growing work of the earth is paused, and now comes the rest that allows for new growth. And again, growth can hurt. When we're small, we experience growing pains. Growing new muscle or bone after an injury hurts. Growing in our depth of understanding of ourselves, of others, of the larger world, that can sometimes cut very deep, as there are times we only grow by causing injury or feeling despair. There's some language of the hurt and discomfort of the changing seasons, specifically in our poem by Rilke, read for us today by Mary. Let's consider. Summer was like your house. You know where each thing stood. Now you must go out into your heart as onto a vast plain. Now the immense loneliness begins. The days go numb. The wind sucks the world from your senses like withered leaves. The wind sucks the world from your senses. The days go numb. These are the kind of metaphors that abound when we read about the transition from summer to fall and to winter in poetry and literature. The time of fall often comes across as melancholy. In Rilke's poem, the summer was like your house. You knew where everything was, but now the immense loneliness begins. And yet, anyone who has spent even a few years of their life far enough from the equator, this should be a fairly known and a familiar process. We know that summer leads to fall, that fall leads to winter, that winter leads to spring, and so the cycle of the year goes year in and year out. We know it's coming each year. Some of us know this with joy and gladness, some with trepidation and with sadness. And that word again, loneliness. That word was also a key part of the story that I shared earlier, as well as of Rilke's poem. What are some reasons that we might find the autumn season lonely? Many of the companions of summer are gone. They have died or have migrated or have hibernated, and the bird song diminishes, and the sounds of frogs and bugs disappear. And after a brief time of increased leaf noise as they fall, there is more silence in a stand of trees than there was before. Now that a little time has passed, I'm going to share a little bit more of the story of Sam, the boy who ran away to live in the mountains. I suppose I'm going to spoil the book a little bit after all, but I think even knowing a small part of how it ends doesn't really spoil the experience of getting there. In the part of My Side of the Mountain that I shared earlier, Sam was approaching his first fall living off the land in the mountains. This fall would not be familiar. He had run away from New York City, and fall means something different there. Sam knows two things: that he needs to store food while he can to survive the winter, and that he's feeling lonely. He misses those parts of fall that were familiar to him in the city, the start of school, the bustle of classes and family and public transportation. By the end of the book, Sam has started making more connections with the humans in the area he lives. He has met a few hikers who've traveled through, and he does make an occasional hike himself into town to visit the library. Sam left the city in part because it felt so noisy and crowded to him. But in this passage near the end of the book, when it is spring again, and two of his friends named Bando and Matt wind up visiting at the same time, Sam discovers something. Matt and Bando also decided to make a guest house out of one of the other trees. I said, yes, let's, because I felt that way, although I knew what it meant. A guest house meant I was no longer a runaway. I was no longer hiding in the wilderness. I was living in the woods, just like anyone else lives in a house. People drop by, neighbors come for dinner. There are 3 meals to get, the shopping to do, the cleaning to accomplish. I felt exactly as I felt when I was home. The only difference was that I was a little harder to visit out here, but not too hard. There sat Matt and Bando. We all burned and dug out another hemlock. I worked with them, wondering what was happening to me. Why didn't I cry no? What made me happily build a city in the forest? Because that is what we were doing. When the tree was done, Bando had discovered that the sap was running in the willow trees and the limbs were just right for slide whistles. He spent the evening making us trombones. We played them together. That word, together. Maybe that was the answer to the city. Part of what Sam is feeling at this moment is the bittersweet pain of growth. He can be proud, for good reason, of surviving the winter alone in the woods. And now he is learning something else. He is learning that he needs other people. When we talk about the pain of growth and about balance, I think sometimes we forget that this is not work we have to do alone. There are unique challenges to balancing with others, but there is also the gift of support, of knowing that others are there even when we feel alone. It is, of course, always possible to feel alone in a crowd and not alone even when one is out on a vast plain. To return to Rilke, through the empty branches, the sky remains. It is what you have. Be earth now and evensong. be the ground lying under that sky. The sky remains. It is what you have. Be earth. Be the very prayer of evening. Be the ground. Because the sky is never alone, nor the earth, nor the people on it, if they choose a life of balance and of growth. Maybe that's the answer to the equinox, to the loneliness, to the city, that word, together. Whatever emotions arise for you at this particular turning of the year, I think this time of balance is an invitation. This transition time can give a new perspective even on those things that feel most familiar. If the emotions arising for you are sadness or loneliness, honor those within yourself, while also reminding yourself there is important work to be done during this time of year. Now is the time for gathering around the fires, for telling tales, for tasting of both the bitter and sweet that our time on this amazing earth produces. Today, instead of singing another hymn out of one of our hymnals, we are going to have some music for meditation. The song, "We Shall Be Known" by Ma Muse, was introduced to me by my advisor in seminary as part of the preparation for a particularly difficult class. This class required hard work done in deep community with other students and instructors, and our instructions were to listen to this song every night for a week before we got together for our class. It's perhaps not surprising this class also took place in the fall. We would sometimes sing it together inexpertly, spontaneously during that week, during a time when singing together was still a thing we can do. This song speaks to the time of harvest and of turning. Part of the lyrics are, "We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth." I invite you to listen deeply to this song, and if it resonates with you, to seek it out. Perhaps try listening to it every night for a week, and dream of that world where this turning point calls us to tend the fires and to sow seeds of change. So may it be.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Yeah.
We invite those at home who lit their own chalice candle to extinguish it at this time as we read in unison. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We extinguish the chalice here, so that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again.
As we move deeper into this season of transition and beauty and change, may we remember the fires we tend together, our community, our faith, the chalice light that is its symbol, and prepare to warm ourselves by them in the months ahead. We take this striving for balance and growth with us into the wider world. So may it be.